Hi, welcome back to our second video having to deal with scripting. Uh, in the first video I talked about how to create scripts, some things you should keep in mind when you create scripts, and how to create variables. In this video I'm going to at least start out with talking about some variables that are already created for you by the system and are always there and available. So, the first variable I'm going to talk about is called path, and I already have it highlighted here. What that is it contains a list of all the directories for the system to look in when you type a command on the command line. So, let me demonstrate this or show you what is contained in there. So, if we do echo %path, there's a list of all the directories that the system looks in when you type in a command. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is that all the directory names or directory paths are separated by semicolons, and you can modify this variable and add your own directories. So do you remember in the first video where I said you should create a directory for all your scripts so that they to kind of keep your other directories neat, and so you can find them in one particular directory? Well, another reason for doing that, that is create a directory for your scripts, is that way you only have one directory to add to the path variable, excuse me, so that the system can find your script. So let me demonstrate what happens without having your directory added to the path variable. Excuse me. Alright, I have my script out here, my simple script display date, and that just simply displays the date, and it works, it runs because I'm in the same directory as the script display date. Let me move my mouse out of the way there a bit. All right, but let me change directories to the Documents folder. All right, and now when I type in display date, I get an error. Again, the reason is the Documents folder directory is not in the path variable. So the system simply doesn't know where to find your command that you just typed in. And when you type a script on the command line, as far as the system is concerned, it's a command you gave it. So let's make some changes here. I'm going to go back up to the home path. Now I have several scripts I've created that have .bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create my scripts folder. So dir, here's my scripts directory, and for some reason I'm calling them all folders today in this video. I'm gonna probably continue to go back and forth, but I am folders, directories, again, like I talked about when we were talking about directories. There's nothing wrong with calling them folders, even in the command line. It's just that technically they're considered to be directories in the command line. Alright, so now what I want to do is I'm going to copy, I'm not going to move them just in case I need them back for a future video or something. So I'm going to copy all the .bat scripts to my scripts directory. And I didn't have to use a capital S there. Remember, I could just simply type it all in lowercase. This time I just happened to go ahead and type a capital S. So those are all copied. And so let's change directory scripts. And there's my scripts. And now what we need to do is we need to add the scripts directory to the path variable. So there's some things when you're modifying system variables you should get into the habit of doing. Okay, the first is make a backup of that variable. Now, one of the things we haven't talked about when you're using variables is that you can use the variable when you're creating a new variable. So you can use it either as part of the variable value, or you can just simply make a copy of a variable. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to type set, and I'm going to create a new variable called saved path. And just like every other kind of variable, when you create it, you need the equal sign. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to include the path variable. And again, because I want to save the value of the variable, I need to include it in percent signs. So I'm simply going to just have the variable there, hit return, no error message. And now when I echo my new variable, there's a copy of the contents of the path variable. All right. Now, we need to modify the path variable itself to include our new directory so it can find where our scripts are. So, there's actually two different ways with the path variable to do this. Path is not only a variable, it's also a command. So instead of using echo, for instance, to display the value of the path variable, which I'll do here, and there's the contents of my path variable, I can just simply type path and it displays everything. So it's a little bit different, but what I'm going to go and do is, instead of just simply using the path command, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the set command since that's what we've been doing. And generally speaking, even when I'm setting the path variable, I try to remember to use set anyway, since you have to use set for every other variable on the system anyway. So we're going to do set path because we're going to change the value of the path variable. So not only can we use set to create variables and assign values to them, we can change the values of variables using the set command. All right. So we need an equal sign, just like we had before. Now, you can add your directory to the beginning of the path value, or you can add it to the end. I prefer to add it to the end because that way I don't forget to type the path variable in percent signs, because remember what we want to do is we want to add our directory to the path variable. We don't want to replace the contents of the path variable, we want to add to it. So since I'm going to add my directory to the end, the first thing we need to list is the path variable in parentheses, because we want to include the contents of the path variable. And then, because all the directory path names have to be separated with semicolons, we need a semicolon. If you look here where I have the value of the path variable displayed, there's no semicolon at the end. So we need to include that. And then finally we include where my script directory is located. And you don't have to specify the path name using upper and lower case. the system will find it just fine. So even in the path variable, you can use all lowercase if you want. Again, I happen to type C in uppercase, so I'm just going to do that. And now we've added on my directory to the value of the path variable. So if I type path, just to display it, I will use path mostly because it does get a little tedious typing echo percent variable percent all the time, even though that's the way you have to do it for every other variable. So sometimes I appreciate not having to do that, at least with the path variable. But to get on to what I'm demonstrating here is there's my semicolon and there's my script. Okay, so I'm in my scripts directory, so now when I do display date, it finds it. Now a couple of things. Because changes you make during your command line session aren't saved between sessions, this is something else that every time you open up the command line window you have to change. So this is another thing that you would add to a script file, that you could execute the script file every time you open up your command line window. Alright. And by the way, that includes creating variables. So if there are certain variables you want to have available to you every time you open up the command line window, then you're going to need to create a script that changes your path and and creates those variables for you. Okay. And let me just do set here. And there's my saved path variable name, and there's the path variable name. Now, if I close out this window, that saved path variable is going to go away. By the way, where does it save all these variables? It actually saves them in the registry. So it's the system reads the registry and creates these path variables for you. So you can temporarily modify these, but if you want to permanently modify them so you don't have to create, or I should say modify, the path variable in this case, you'd have to go and change a registry entry. And at this time I'm not going to go through that. We have enough to do just working through all the stuff for scripting. Alright, so now we've got the path variable created. And by the way, I use the path variable with, and I'm going to scroll back up here, with setting my path. And you, as I said a little bit earlier, is you can use any variable like this. So you can include any variable as part of commands and add them to commands so that you can get the values. And when I was demonstrating parameters, when you're executing a script and the commands get displayed, you'll be able to see as the value gets substituted for the actual variable name while the script is executing. Alright, now a couple of other system variables is user profile, home path, system root. Now, user profile and home path, even though I have them listed here as showing where your home directory is located, they actually display slightly different pieces of information. So let me do echo user profile, and that displays the absolute path name of where your home directory is located. Whereas echo %home path simply displays a partial path name without the drive letter. So I don't have a good example of what you'd use home path for. Not exactly sure why you would have a separate variable that simply contains a partial path name and doesn't include the drive letter. Because most of the time you're using user profile to identify exactly where your home directory is located. So you can use that as part of the cd command. So if I do cd percent user profile, it moves me directly to my home directory. So you can include that as part of a path name. So I can say cd percent user profile / documents, and it would move me directly to my documents directory. All right. The other variable I have here is called system root. Identifies where the Windows operating system is installed, and it does give you the absolute path name for that. So when I echo percent system root, I get the absolute path name of where the Windows operating system is installed. Okay. Now, there is one other variable I don't have listed here that you may see, and I'm going to point it out here at the bottom of what was displayed in the set command, and that's called windir, dir, and it has the same directory location, but as far as I can tell, windir is a legacy variable that was available in older versions of Windows. Why it's still here in Windows 8 is what I'm using right now, I don't know. But the current new variable that contains where the Windows operating system is installed is the system root variable. So if I use that again, that's what I use, and if you need to use it in your scripts, that's what you should use as well. Alright, now, more commands. Alright, so I'm done talking about system variables. We'll use other variables and need to create other variables later on in this PowerPoint or talking about scripting. But before I actually get to some commands, I just want to talk generally about the commands you're going to see. First off, these are not all the commands available to you. They're the most common ones, I think at least. There are some others you use frequently, but the commands I'm going to demonstrate are enough. They'll get you started. So, one of the things you need to know about commands in scripts is they're executed one at a time. That means as the command line reads the commands inside the script, it executes command 1, then command 2, command 3, and so on. Now, I do talk about here unless you jump to another command, and there is a command you can use in scripts to make decisions. It's called an if command that allows you to bypass some of the commands and execute other commands. There's also another command called goto, which I'll talk about later, that allows you to literally jump past some commands. Again, usually use it with an if command to go to a different part of your script. And we'll talk more about that later. Now, commands don't wait for previous commands to finish before starting to execute. So you have to be a little bit careful when you construct your script that if a later command depends on some other command finishing either first or successfully, you can account for that when you create your script a little bit. There is a way to guarantee that one command will only execute if another command execute successfully, and we'll talk about that later. But there are also times when you simply have to pause and wait to make sure that another command is going to finish successfully. There is an actual command called pause that I'm going to show you, but there are other things you could do to do some kind of loop so that you could wait and check and make sure something like a directory gets created correctly before any other command gets executed. I'm not going to do too much on looping. Again, I don't want to throw too much at you as far as scripting goes. All right. Now, the commands I'm going to be showing you are literally most useful when you use them in scripts, but like all commands on the command line, you can type them in manually to actually test to make sure they're going to work like you think they will work. Now, most of the times you don't type these commands in on the command line like if commands because they're long. And it takes a while to type everything out. But you can type them one time or a couple of times just to make sure you get the syntax correct before you actually put them in the command line. I'm sorry, to put them in your script to do more testing. Now, all of the commands, just like all the previous commands that I've talked about, do have more help associated with them. So you can type help command line, or I'm sorry, help command name, or command name / question mark. And several of these commands do have quite a few switches that are available. I'm only going to show you a few of the switches, and you can do help to play around more on the command line and see what else you can do. All right, with that, what we're going to do is actually start talking about some of the commands. And the very first command I want to talk about is called start. And what that allows you to do is to have a different command, or I'm sorry, have a different script execute in a separate window, or just simply execute. And the script will run. You can specify that it does not open a separate window with this /B switch I have shown here. Or you can have it open up a different window and assign a title to that window. And I have that demonstrated here. So I'm going to actually demonstrate how you would use this command and also how you can use the commands on the command line for testing purposes. So if I just simply type the start command by itself, it'll open up a brand new window. All right. So in that window, you can actually type other commands in. It keeps its own command history. And then when you're done, you can just simply close it. Now, I can do things like start and actually type listing, and it can't find listing. Make sure you type the name correct. Ooh, I wonder if I named that script something different. Well, let's do this with my display date command. So start display date. Interesting. All right, let's type path. Make sure my scripts are there. So that's odd. Let me get into my scripts directory. Display date. I don't remember display date requiring a full path name to the script, but let's double check that. So if I do start, and I'll use the absolute full path name here. All right, scripts. display date. Okay, that worked. So let me try one other thing though, just to double check something. That's what I get for not testing before I created the video. Display date.bat. Okay. In this case, when you're using the start command, sorry I didn't remember that it either required the full path name, or you need to make sure you, in this case, you have to include the file extension at the end. So as long as you include the file extension at the end, you don't need to list the entire absolute path name of where the script is located at. Alright. Now, you can also use the /b to, and let me put it at the beginning here, display date.bat. Now normally if you're going to not display the results from a script you execute or any other command you execute with the start command, that means you're going to use redirection. If the script's going to display anything, you're going to use redirection to have the text get put into a file for you to look at later with your script. So I'm going to use redirection to create a new variable called display output. Now let me change that to date output .txt. So nothing got displayed, no new window appeared, but I should now have a date output .txt file, and I do. Alright. Okay. Now, as far as creating a new window with a title on it, so I can include in double quotes what you want the title of the window to be. So to a certain extent it acts like the title command, but what you want to have as the title has to be in double quotes. So I'll call this date display test. And then you just simply so now I have the command as start with what I want to be the title in quotes, followed by the script to execute, display date.bat, and there. Now notice, I honestly don't know what causes this. It's displaying the window as a standard window with a black background and smaller text, only because I gave it a title now. So I'm not sure why it does that, but at any rate, that's what you get. And if you need this window open all the time, you can modify the colors and the font size if you need to. I'm simply just going to close this. Alright, so that's pretty much everything I'm going to talk about with start. I will do help start. And another, oh there we go. I thought I was going to get a glitch here. I got it one other time where it simply wouldn't display the window. But what I wanted to do is there are other options you can specify with start. I just wanted to show them that there is more stuff here. Thank you. Alright. Okay. So there's a lot more things that are involved with start, and as you can see, okay, now I'm getting my window glitch. Occasionally, no, I should say frequently, when you test the start command on a window For some reason, especially if you use the /B or something, it screws up the display on your window. So I'm going to have to close this window out and open up a new window so that everything is working the way I need it to for the video. Alright, so after start, what I'm going to talk about is the echo command. And you've seen me use that mainly to display the value of variables. But in the previous video, you also saw that if you just simply type in echo, it displays information. So if I type echo here, it lets me know that echo is turned on, meaning that commands will be displayed. Now, you use the echo command a couple of different ways inside of a script. And I have a couple of things here. So I've used it to display variables previously. So here's echo user profile, which I just did, echo %1 for one of the parameters. And one of the other ways you can use echo is simply to display some kind of text, like I have highlighted here. And anything that you type after the echo command will get displayed. So if I type echo, this is a test, then the string this is a test gets displayed. Alright, now when you're using the echo command inside of a script, there's some other uses of the echo command. So here's my off and here's my on commands. So when you don't want commands to be displayed by a script, you can literally turn echo off by typing echo off. Now, when you do this on the command line, it literally turns off the display. So to actually get your prompt back and be able to type anything else on the command line, you use echo on, and it comes back. So what I'm going to do is modify my test script. And one of the things I didn't demonstrate before, when we open up Notepad, you can actually type Notepad followed by a file name, and it will open up that file for you. Okay, so here's the commands we've displayed before, and when you run the script, it displays the commands, which is good for testing because it also shows you how the variables are getting filled in so that you can see if the variables actually have the values that you thought they would have as the script is executing. But if you don't want to have the commands displayed, you can simply type echo space off. And I'm going to save that, and we're going to run. So test script. And the only thing that gets displayed as far as a command goes is the echo off command. But for the rest of the commands, I get my date, I get my echo %0 for the actual script name, and then the other echoes for the parameters, which simply say echo is off now because I didn't specify any parameters. Alright. Now, one of the other things you can use with echo is I have it called a period here, but it's literally you type echo followed immediately by a period and you get a blank line. So I can do that on the command line without any problems getting caused. So echo period, I just simply get a blank line. Notice I don't get echo is off, I don't get echo is on displayed. So as soon as the period is there, it immediately gives me a blank line. Now what you can use that for is to create a little bit of formatting between the output of certain commands. So I can use echo, this is line 1, and it displays that. Then I can do echo, period, I get a blank line, echo, this is line 2, I get this is line 2, and then I can simply echo some text. Like in this case, I'll do dashes. Alright, so doing this all on the command line, it's hard to see how it all fits, but you can see that as you type the command in on the command line, you can immediately see how it's going to look or if it's going to work at all. So let's go back to Notepad. Move my window over here a little bit. And what I can do is I can type echo, this is line 1. I'll then leave my date where it is, and then I'm going to include echo, this is line 2, echo, period, echo, and then dashes. Alright, so I'll save that, and then we'll run the command again, or my script again. And now what I get is I get the this is line 1 echoed, the date followed by this is line 2, followed by a blank line, and then my dashes. So this allows you to display things out and get a little bit of control about how things look. Or if your script is creating a file that contains the data, you can actually then get the data separated by having blank lines or dashes or pretty much anything else that you want to have in the file to separate things just by using these echo commands. Alright, now the next command I want to talk about briefly is the @ sign. Now what you use the @ sign for is to simply turn off one command. And I've got two examples here. I have it in front of the echo off command, and I also have it in front of a dir command, dir. So if you wanted to, while you're testing your script, you could turn off the display of 1, 2, or as many commands as you wanted to. But when your script gets finished, the best way to turn off all the commands is to simply use the echo off command at the beginning of the script, like I have in my test script. But one of the things I want to point out when I've been running my test script is the actual command echo off gets displayed itself. So since you want to have all command display turned off, what you need to include is this @ sign in front of the echo command so that even that doesn't get displayed. So I'm going to go back to my Notepad file. I'm going to click up here, and I'm simply going to add an @ sign to only that command. Since I'm already turning off the command display for everything else, I simply want to turn off the display for that echo command as well. So I'll save that, and then we'll go back to the command line and we'll run test script, and now nothing gets displayed. You see test script because I typed that in, but you don't get an echo command. All you get is the text that you actually want displayed. Okay, now I think for the last command for this video, what I'm going to show here is the pause command. And that's the command I was talking about earlier that you can literally put inside of a script, and it stops. It waits for you to press enter to allow it to continue, and you can test it right here on the command line. You get that, press any key to continue, and then just hit return, and it just sits there until you hit return. Alright, so if I put this in my script, I'll put it after this echo command, and I'll save it, and now when I run my script, everything gets displayed until it hits that pause command. It waits for me to hit any key, and then it displays the rest of the information. And when it says any key, it literally means any key. Although I was hitting enter earlier, I just simply this time I hit the space bar. Alright, that gets us for a long enough video this time. So I'm going to pause here, and so we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.